but I did not know if it would be all right. And even at 6 years old, I understood that there is something worse about false comfort than about silence. His name was Josiah Pruitt. He came to our hollow in late October of 1851 when I was 7 years old. I remember the day clearly. The sky was the particular gray that means winter is coming to the mountains, and the last leaves were letting go of the oaks above the cabin. He arrived on a mule, a large man, perhaps 50 years old, with a red face and small eyes that sat too close together. He was prosperous in the way that certain men in those hills were prosperous, not wealthy by any city standard, but owning enough land and livestock to be comfortable, to eat well, to not lie awake worrying about coin. I did not know why he had come. I watched from the cabin doorway while he tied his mule and walked to where my mother was standing in the yard, wiping her hands on her apron. They spoke for a long while. I could not hear the words, but I could see the way my mother's body changed as they talked, the way her shoulders dropped, the way her hands stilled, the way she glanced toward the cabin once, briefly, and then looked away. After a time, Pruitt came to the cabin door and looked at me with those small, close-set eyes, the way you would look at a horse you were thinking of buying. He looked at my hands. He looked at my size. He did not speak to me. He went back and spoke some more with my mother. Then he rode away. My mother came inside and began making supper without saying a word about what had happened. I learned later, much later, the shape of what had been discussed. Josiah Pruitt was a widower. His wife had died the previous year, leaving him with a farm to run and a household to manage and no woman to do it. He had 3 sons, the youngest of whom was 8 years old. He did not want to take on a wife, or so he told people, though I have my own thoughts on that. What he wanted was a girl old enough to be useful, but young enough to be trained to his ways. Someone to cook and clean and mind the younger boy. Someone who could be had cheaply, because he was not a man who liked to spend money when he didn't have to. He had heard about my mother's situation through the way news travels in small communities, which is to say through the church and the gossip that flows around it like water around a stone. He had come to make an offer. He would take me. In exchange, he would provide my mother with 50 pounds of flour, some salt, and some dried pork, enough to get through the worst of the winter. And he would keep me, feed me, house me, work me. My mother thought about it for 3 days. I did not know she was thinking about it. I did not know there was anything to think about. I was 7 years old, and I thought the man on the mule had simply come and gone, the way people sometimes did. On the 3rd day, she called me in from the yard where I had been playing with Clarence, and she sat me down at the table and told me I was going to go live with a man named Pruitt for a while. How long? I asked. She did not answer that. Will you come with me? I asked. No, she said, but I will come to see you. She never did. He came back on a Wednesday morning, 4 days after my mother told me I was going. It was November. The first hard frost had come 2 nights before, and the ground crackled under your feet when you walked on it. My breath made clouds in the air. My mother had dressed me in my best dress, which was not very good, a faded blue calico that had been let out twice as I grew. She had braided my hair and tied it with a strip of rag. I remember standing in the yard, holding my small bundle, a change of clothes, a comb, a small cloth doll my father had made me the winter before he died, stuffed with wool scraps and with 2 black buttons for eyes. That doll was the only thing of my father's I had. Pruitt arrived with his wagon. In the wagon bed was the bag of flour, 50 pounds in a burlap sack with the mill's mark on it. Beside it, a paper twist of salt and the dried pork wrapped in cloth. He and my mother spoke briefly. He handed her the sack of flour. She had to struggle with the weight of it, pulling it toward her, setting it against the cabin wall. I watched her do this. I watched her receive payment for me, and I understood, in the way children sometimes understand things before they have the words for them, exactly what was happening. The flour was not a gift. It was not charity. It was a price. My mother had set a price on me, and a man she barely knew had agreed to pay it. And now the exchange was being completed the same way any other exchange at a market would be completed. Goods for goods, each party satisfied with the bargain. I was 7 years old. I stood in that frozen yard and I felt something happen inside me that I have never been able to describe properly in all the years since. It was not grief exactly, though grief was part of it. It was not anger, though that came later. It was more like the feeling of a foundation giving way, of discovering that something you had believed was solid was not solid at all, had never been solid, and that everything built on top of it was now suddenly in question. My mother loved me. I had believed this as simply and completely as I believed in the ground under my feet. And now I watched her hand me over for a bag of flour, and I thought, she embraced me before I climbed into the wagon. She held me for a moment, and I could feel her heart beating fast. And I thought perhaps she was going to take it back, to tell Preth the deal was off, to pull me back against her, and say she had made a mistake. She did not. She let me go. She stepped back, and she said, and I have heard these words in my head for 74 years, she said, "Be a good girl, Eliza. Do as you're told. Mind yourself." That was all. "No, I love you. No, I'm sorry. No, this is only for a little while. Just be a good girl. Do as you're told."